to connect with you. My name is Michelle, and I am the recruiting and sales manager here at Flex Air Flight Training. And today I am joined by our CEO, Paul Wynns. So, Paul, if you wanted to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Wynns. It's great to chat with you, Michelle. Yeah, and I'm taking some time out of the day. And Michelle, I appreciate you doing the same thing to talk about one of our competitors and how we're different. So yeah, we'll throw a little shade, but we'll also be fair and nice. So Michelle, what have we got here today?
Yeah, absolutely. So today we're going to address some of the differences between Flex Air's career training and some other similar career training, be them full-time, part-time. So we're just going to address some other full-time career training programs, similar to maybe ATP is a big one you hear about, or some other schools nationwide. So Paul, why don't we just start out and address what's the main difference you think of when you compare Flex Air's career programs, career offerings compared to a school like ATP?
Yeah, 100%. That's a good place to start. And I know that you talk to a lot of people who have heard of ATP there. I mean, the name of the school is the name of the ticket that you're trying to get, right? So they've got great branding. They've got a great website. Everybody knows them. They've got incredible, many, many years, decades of reputation. So we hear about them a lot. But yeah, how are we different? So we've realized here at FlexAir, and this comes from the insights that you've gotten from talking to all of these students and prospective students over the years, and us working with the many hundreds of students who we've sent to the airlines, that things are different now than they were in 1980, whatever, when ATP was founded. There's a pilot shortage. The people who are coming in are much more diverse. They come from different walks of life. They have different needs in how their training is going to be delivered. And so that's what we're trying to do at FlexAir. So, it's in the name. We prize this flexibility. And one of the biggest things is, and I'm curious, Michelle, about how much of a big deal you think this is from talking to people, but we don't require you to train 7 days a week on every single working day and more. We have this flexible scheduling system that we've been talking to people about with Flexible Career Academy. So how do you think that resonates with the people that we talk to? Like, what kind of students do we get on this flexible program, and how do you think that works out for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you touched on, a lot more people are getting into aviation and flight training, specifically becoming student pilots. And with that, they come from a lot of different backgrounds. Maybe they are finishing school, working part-time, working a job outside of exploring aviation as they transition. So, with this, I've been having a lot of conversations with people in regards to scheduling and what a schedule would look like for them to maybe explore a career in aviation. And so, like you said, flexible, it's kind of in the name at FlexAir. And we really do our best to build specific programs. So, here at FlexAir, it's not a one size fits all model. It's not you have to be here from 8 to 5, Monday through Sunday. So with us, there's two tracks that people can embark on. They can opt to flight train on more of a part-time schedule if, say, they're going to school, they've got a family, they've got another job. A part-time schedule is just sometimes more realistic for people. And you don't see that a lot with career prep programs, career flight training programs. You don't usually have the option to train on a part-time or more flexible schedule. And even with our full-time schedule, we can make it pretty flexible. So full time with us, you're probably going to be flying 4 or 5 days a week. And with that, we try to make scheduling as flexible as possible for people. So it's really just making people comfortable with the transition, helping them figure out where flying fits into their day to day as they're standing on the edge of this cliff, making the jump into aviation. We want to do everything we can to help them feel like they can incorporate it into their lives pretty easily. And how do you think people respond to that, Paul? Do you similarly have conversations with people transitioning like that?
I do, as you talk to mainly the civilian student candidates who are coming in, I spend a lot of time talking to veterans, and this is something to transitioning military people that they really prize because they spend so much time in this highly regimented military environment. They're looking for a little bit of flexibility and some freedom in their lives to explore other parts of their lives because aviation, it's a career. It's this really fun and rewarding career, but it's part of the bigger picture of who you are as a person. And so you need some time to work on that, whether you're, somebody who's coming into, your first career field in aviation and you're a civilian, or you're somebody who's transitioning into it, or you're a career switcher, where you're working in some other civilian career and you've got a family and you need some accommodations for that. So that's what we're all about. And I think it's important to talk about scheduling. How does that work with us? What can you expect? On the operations side, it's something that I've noticed that we do that is very difficult. It's very difficult to do well, but it's something we think is worth doing. It's the way we run our weekly scheduling system. And so, you as a PPL student, are familiar with this. Students tell us every week when they're available to fly. And we use this centralized computer-based system. It's based on the web. You can access it from your phone. You put in what's called a schedule request. We pull all of those schedule requests and load them into our system every night, every Wednesday night. And then the base managers will then take that and use that to construct a schedule for the following week. So we build a weekly schedule around what the students need. So we meet the students where they are. We build that schedule based on students, weather, CFI availability, aircraft availability. All of those factors get baked into the schedule. But the main thing is the students, and they tell us when they're available to fly. And we build a schedule around that. And what was your experience with that, Michelle? Because I know that you were working on like Miramar College at the same time that you were working on PPL with us. So how did that work for you?
Yeah, so I was a part-time student. I was also part-time working at a different job while starting my flight training. So it made it really easy for me to say, afternoons work a little bit better for me Monday through Friday, or, open availability on Saturday or Sunday. And I would chat with my CFI. She would give me some guidance of, I want to see you on the flight line twice next week. I want to do one dual, one ground. I want to see you solo. And there is a little bit of variation depending on what stage of flight training you're in. When you're at the beginning of a specific rating or license, you're going to be doing some more ground, working on some more ground knowledge, maybe working on that simulator that I see behind you, Paul. But towards the end of your training, you're really hitting the flight line hard. So you're working through some of those nerves, you're practicing all the maneuvers. So it is a very just dynamic process of filling out those schedule requests. So that system, that schedule request system, gives you the freedom to adjust your training however you and your CFI kind of see fit for the stage of training that you're in. So that was something that I really liked. And we also open it up, say, if you need to go out of town one week, that is something that you have the freedom to tell us. You tell your CFI, you let our base managers know who are building the schedule out for you, and you zero out your request. So it works really well for people who have other commitments, say they're going out of town. So you don't have to feel locked into training all the time. On the opposite end of the spectrum, maybe you have a week off where you really want to hit flight training hard. You want to request some extra flight blocks, and that's something that you also have the freedom to do. So it's all just about that communication between the staff and the student that I really appreciate.
That's great. And one of the things that enables that, that we do operationally is we keep this very, very low student to instructor ratio. So we target about 6 students to every instructor, because if you get much more above that, like these one-on-one discussions that you were talking about, Michelle, that you would have with Hannah back in the day, we want those to happen with every single student and every single instructor. And if you got like 5, 6, 7, you can make that happen. But if you're a CFI and you're loaded down with 10, 20 students, which is what we often see at these larger schools that are our competitor, that are really good at something, but not so good at what we're good at, and that's that one-on-one, and not having that cookie cutter approach to training, having something that's customized for every student, because everybody's got different needs, just like yours were different than a typical student.
Yeah, I would say it all goes back to that it's never a one size fits all. So we really do a good job of having conversations with the student, tailoring their flight training. And with that, we do have some flexibility in regards to timeline. So that's another piece that really comes up in the conversations of how does FlexAir compare to a school like ATP who promises maybe a 7 month timeline for a full career academy. For us, we like to push more of our averages, and those averages are about 10 to 14 months. So when I have the conversations with people, I tell them just around a year is how long you're going to be in training for a full career program, what we call maybe our zero to hero. So no experience going up through CFI and CFII. And with that, that range, a lot of people ask, why is it such a big range of that 10 to 14 months? And it goes back to that flexibility that students have. It's all about what kind of schedule, what kind of flight tempo they're keeping up with. So we aren't as strict as maybe some schools who have a regimented, time of year that they start. We're a little bit different in that we offer rolling start dates and we offer specific training plans per person.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. That what is that? The 7 month promise, or I wouldn't call it a promise, but the 7 month prediction that we see folks in the super accelerated programs talking about, where ATP, I think, is saying that their zero to hero program can be done in 7 months. I think some of the bigger academies like L3 Harris also have, similar types of timelines. I think an important thing to talk about there, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts about your impressions of PPL and how you personally did that, is if you're on a 7 month program, you're probably one of those people who is flying maybe 6 times a week. That's 6 flights, 6 days a week. If each of those flights is 2 hours in duration, how much prep time did you have to spend, Michelle, on your own with chair flying, studying the materials, your own practice? How much of a load is outside of the aircraft can people expect on those super accelerated programs?
Yeah, generally the accepted estimate that most people are going to hear from mentors from CFIs is you want to spend at least 2 hours of, ground time, so studying on your own, studying books, chair flying. So 2 hours per every flight hour that you're going to be in the aircraft. So really making sure that you're honing in those skills of the knowledge that you're going to need to make the flight productive. And so when you put it that way, when you have that 2-to-1 ratio, it really puts into perspective, if someone's flying 12 hours a week, are they going to spend a full 24 hours on the ground studying? And of course, that's not the most desirable part of flight training. So you often see maybe people skip out on the ground training, and that causes delays in their flight training. So just really being realistic in the estimates of how much you're going to fly every week, how much you're going to have to prepare, because everyone loves thinking about sitting in the aircraft, but no one likes thinking about hitting the books, reading the textbooks, taking the practice exams, practicing for your oral exam and your check ride. It's just not the most desired part of flight training. And so a lot of people forget that. And like I said, it causes delays in flight training. So just being realistic about how much time you're spending both on the ground and in person flying.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not only that too, but there's no wiggle room. What if something
Hmm.
goes wrong? What if you have it takes you a little bit longer to learn how to land the plane or a key maneuver? What if you have a life event that happens or you just have an off week? If there is zero margin for error in a 7 month accelerated program, the way I see it is there's no safety net. So if you have any trouble, and everybody has. I was just talking to one of the mentees that I'm working with right now in my SkillBridge program, and this gentleman is, he's a parachute qualified gentleman. He's done some stuff, the incredible leadership ability, but he's also been struggling with landings, and so. In a 7 month accelerated program, somebody who has great leadership skills and great maturity but who has a bad week, there's no net. And so we like to make sure that people have a net. and some wiggle room here at Flex Air because everybody's human. Nobody's going to be perfect in flight training. And if you're in a 7 month program, you got to be perfect to keep up with that program. And everybody struggles at some point. Even Neil Armstrong. I like to tell the story that if you go to the Naval Aviation Museum, the dude who landed on the moon failed out of the one of his early flight school training evolutions in Navy flight school. He actually has a failing grade, and you can go and look at the grade sheet in the museum. He struggled with landing pattern and comms, like everybody does. So you got to be perfect to keep up with a lot of these programs, and we don't expect people to be perfect. And I think it's just a more realistic and modern approach to flight training is to give some flexibility there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with your training, we definitely set milestones for when we want to see you maybe take your written exam, when we want to see you, when we're predicting check ride. And so we have milestones that we track towards with your flight training that you're fully aware of. But we take this on a case by case basis. So if something happens, if you're not picking up the maneuvers as quickly as projected, there's a conversation that we have, between you and your CFI, between you and your mentor, where we sit down and we talk about what a realistic flight plan is going to look like. If we have to push those milestones forward, if we have to push a check ride forward, we're really in it for the student's success in their flight training. We never want them to feel rushed or that we're trying to keep them on this strict regimented pace where maybe they feel like they're just going to be pushed over or pushed past what's reasonable for them. So while we have those standards and milestones that we set co- um, to set a specific timeline for someone, we do also take it on a case by case basis. So it goes back to we tailor the training towards the student. As much as we can, as much as realistic. We don't try to make students fit a one size fits all mold.
Yeah, and that's why we have this wide range of training timelines because those timelines are driven by the student and their preferences and their needs and their progress. So we just like to be honest about that. And I think you hit the nail right on the head. Is we don't have a one size fits all type of an approach, but we do have standards. We're very casual and approachable. We're very relaxed in how we deal with each other and our students. We don't have a really hierarchical type of an environment here, but that doesn't mean that we don't have standards. We have, a Part 141 operation. We have two Part 61 operations. We have standard operating procedures that govern everything from how we operate our aircraft to how we plan to what risks we're allowed to take in training, which are very small at the beginning, but then more as you get more experienced, how our instructors are expected to behave, how we manage loans. All of that is all governed by standard operating procedures. But that doesn't mean that we're one size fits all, but you do need standards because it's aviation. And at the end of the day, the customer is not always right in flight training. And that is because, we have standards and we have to all obey the FAA rules. So we definitely have all of that, but you can do that and still I think what is our motto that we talk about with this? We like to have a soul, right? So we have a soul, but we still have standards.
Paul, how would you compare a program with more of a fixed pricing structure versus how we handle billing here at FlexAir?
Yeah, that's a really important question because we actually get that a lot because ATP being such a big and well-known school, their pricing policy is kind of unique in the industry. So everybody thinks that that's what every flight school does, which is not at all true. So ATP uses what they call fixed tuition or fixed pricing, which means it's like buying a refrigerator. There's one price, and that's what you're going to pay or like paying for tuition at a college. You're going to pay that tuition, and so it's supposedly easier to remember and easy to understand because if they tell you that the rating is going to cost $100, I'm making that number up, but if they tell you it's $100, it's $100. But what is less obvious, and you have to read the fine print and see how the training actually works, is that that's the minimum price you're going to pay. It can go up, and in many cases, it does go up above that, and you as the student, and especially you as the student with a loan, are responsible for all of that additional cost. that could happen. And that could happen because of weather, which is outside of your control. It could happen due to your performance and maybe failing a check ride. And so that's in your control. But all kinds of other factors. And so what this leads to is, I think, a misunderstanding in the industry with people who come to us at FlexAir, where we're also going to give you what we call a package price. We're going to say, instead of telling you this is how much it costs per hour, because we don't believe in pricing things per hour, because hours don't get you to the airlines. An outcome, a rating, a career outcome, those are what matter to us. So we're going to price it by the entire program package. And so people sometimes they get confused and they think, oh, you're doing it like ATP, and that's not true. What we're doing is we're giving you what the expected price is going to be, but you're only going to pay for what you use. So an example of that is, I was just talking to a PPL completion person the other day. They just got their check ride done, and they were celebrating, and they actually came in a little bit under budget, and they only had to pay for what they used on that budget. Or if they had a loan, they could have rolled that money forward into the next part of the program, which would have been instrument or a similar program for them. So that's an important difference that we have to go out of our way to make sure people understand it, because ATP is such a strong presence in the industry. People assume that everybody prices like them, and that is actually not the case.
In regards to a fixed program like ATPs is you can't come in at different points of your flight training journey. So if you are in the middle of a PPL or if you're in the middle of instrument and you're looking to make a switch into a more serious career program, that's another way that we differ between a fixed program, similar to ATPs, is that we can take you in the middle of a rating. Of course, it's easier to come in at the end of a rating or with a complete license, but you're not restricted in that way. So if you come in with your instrument rating done and you're looking to continue on for the rest of the program, looking through commercial, CFI, CFII, that's something that we can absolutely accommodate for. So like we keep reiterating, we tailor the programs towards what you need. So if you come into us, maybe you need a BFR, it's been a couple years since you last took a check ride, we can set up something personalized where you come in with a BFR, you do some refresher training, and you jump back into training like you never left. And similarly, if you're looking to only do instrument or only do PPL, that's another way that we could build out your program. So if you're planning on doing PPL with us, private pilot's license, and then pursuing the rest of your rating ahead of a move, or you're looking at a different program like a university program, and you just want to get that experience, you have the option to do more of what we consider a la carte training. So picking and choosing which licenses are correct for you at the time that you're pursuing training. So easy entrances with us, easy exits with us as well. Paul, anything to add on that topic?
Yeah, that is a really important topic to bring up, and I'm glad you did. Couple of examples kind of come to mind to, make this tangible so people can understand just what this could mean to them. There's a couple of folks that I was talking to the other day that just onboarded into our veteran program. They were working at a local flying club here in San Diego. And so flying clubs can often be a really, really even more flexible than us, even more low cost than us option. But the drawback with flying clubs is it's easy to get kind of lost in the shuffle. And so I kind of set the picture there, because these people are coming in with all of their private pilot license done. One of them has actually failed a check ride. And both of them are kind of spinning their wheels in training, and they want to finish with us. And what we were actually able to do is, in one case, co-enroll one trainee in our SRM program, which is our, as you know, SRM is a prep program for instrument. It allows you to build in a single pilot resource management context, build some cross-country time. So we can co-enroll this one person, while they're still waiting for their PPL check ride, we can actually use our flexible Part 61 program to help them get a head start on their instrument. And in another case where the student is really kind of struggling, and apparently their instructor over at the club is just kind of letting them die on the vine, we're actually providing supplemental ground instruction just to help get this guy rounded out and get him ready for the check ride, which is still going to be endorsed over at the club, but we're actually co-enrolling and again getting this guy moving forward so that he gets even more instruction because we're about to onboard him into instrument training. So cannot do that in the very, hyper structured big flight school environments. Can't do that without a low student to instructor ratio. That only happened because we had a bunch of one-on-one conversations with each of these students during the onboarding process. So that's one pair of examples. And then I think another one to bring up that kind of came to mind as you were talking about what I envision as like on ramps and off ramps for flight training. It's the off ramps too. We have noticed because we get a lot of job applications for CFIs who are over at ATP but cannot get a job at ATP. And we have noticed that ATP tends to, and the big schools all do this, they preferentially hire only people from inside their flight school. And that means if they're full with hiring, that's it. You're on your own, you're out on the street, you're having to look at the wider job market on your own. For us, it's a little bit different. We have a lot more flexibility, so it's easier, and also with our career placement program, it's easier for us to send people to other flight schools and get them hired as a CFI. We just did that a few months ago with one of our SkillBridge veterans too, and we've done it with other civilian folks in the past. So that flexible on-ramp and off-ramp part about us, I think that's important to keep in mind because it's something that you lose when you're a really big school that's really good at an assembly line that is only 7 months long. That means that if you fit that mold, you're going to do fine. But if you don't fit that mold, then you're going to be on your own. And we try not to be that way.
Yeah, I think that's also one of the biggest things that sets us apart because everyone is wanting to know what their next step is after flight training. Sometimes we say no one wants to be a student pilot. You have to be a student pilot in order to get to your dream career, whether that be airlines or corporate charter, something like that. So with a lot of the conversations that you initially have with either myself as the recruiting manager here or with your mentors throughout your program when you're doing career coaching, you're doing evolution coaching. We're really tailoring what that future outcome is going to look like. And like Paul said, that placement is for your time build job. So as a CFI, and the great thing is it's not limited to internal FlexAir hires. And that's especially useful for people who might want to move outside of our training bases, outside of our training locations. We still help place you whether or not it is with FlexAir. And then at your first regional job, so your next step up once you reach your minimum hours, we're still in contact with you. We still have a personal relationship with you, and I think that's really the strong point of FlexAir's program is these interpersonal relationships with mentors that you have, because a large piece of a career in aviation is about networking. So the more people you know, the more mentors you talk with, the more confident you're going to be moving up the chain, going on to an airline job. And it's just really honing in that practice of having those goal setting conversations and just being really open about what you want your future to look like.
Yeah, 100%. And that part that you mentioned there towards the end about networking, I think that's the most misunderstood and underappreciated part about being a pilot. Every single interview for every single part of any job that you're going to have as a pilot is, first of all, going to look at, do you meet the minimums? And everybody does because the FAA certification process mandates that. So how are you going to break these candidates out? It's going to be about those soft skills, those people skills, and a big school cannot spend the time with you as an individual to really hone those soft skills. And that more than anything else is what your success as a career pilot is going to depend on. You're going to get the hard skills, the actual aircraft skills. That's going to happen no matter what. But it's those soft skills about, can you have a conversation with someone and build rapport? Do you know how to approach somebody to ask for a letter of recommendation, to get a recommendation into the flight school where you want to get hired, or into the regional or the charter or that first job that you're going to have after you're a CFI? It takes a lot of soft skills, and you just can't get that in a big assembly line environment. And so if you have it already and you're comfortable with those sorts of things, that's great. But if you don't, that is what we take the time with, because that's what I've seen. And I don't know, you're seeing this with the personality assessments that we do, right? That matters a lot for how well people do in training.
Yeah, I mean, personality assessment, there's a lot of fear associated with them, especially when you think about the airline hiring process and you want to look good to everyone that you're applying to. So that's one of my favorite parts of our application process is doing that personality assessment because it just allows the candidates to get practice, get eyes on to what that process and experience will feel like and what it'll look like on the other side. So it's never about weeding anyone out because personality types of pilots are all across the board. Really, anyone can be a good pilot. But it's important to look at those as opportunities to learn more about your strengths and weaknesses and where you can hone in a lot of those interpersonal skills as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is of all the things that we talked about here today, um, certainly everybody wants a flexible schedule. People want flexible financing. People want flexible on ramps and off ramps. This is all part of what I think modern flight training and the modern aviation industry demands, which is why things have changed. And so some of the bigger, flight schools, I think they may be kind of caught flat-footed with the way that they're, choosing this kind of cookie cutter assembly line approach. But of all the things that we do at Flex Air, I would say that's the most important one that you mentioned there. There's this personality assessment that is the same one that many of the major national and international airlines use, in the industry. We also use this personality assessment too. But how do we use it? So we don't use it to weed people out. Talk about like that first day. Somebody's in the pilot pathway program and their first interaction with you and this personality assessment and that interview workshop that they go through. Tell us about that.
Yeah, yeah. So as the application as a whole kind of progresses, I sit down, I have a conversation with the student about what their future prospects are. So of course we touch on, how FlexAir is going to look like for them, what it's going to look like for them to be a full-time student or a part-time student, whatever path they choose in a career flight training program. And after that, they go through this short application process. And I like to reiterate that the application process is really in the aim of getting you more experience of making sure that you're the best candidate that we can, and seeing maybe where there are some lapses, some weaknesses that we can work on. And so that is always my mindset going into the personality assessment. So the personality assessment, one of my favorite tools, like you mentioned, Paul. A lot of the majors use the exact same assessment that we use. Um, I believe it's used by Southwest, Frontier, some airlines in the EU. So it's really cool for candidates to hear, like, oh, I'm going to get to see what this personality assessment looks like, and I'm going to get the experience of getting to take it. And it's fairly short, about 30 minutes to an hour. And if you've ever taken a personality assessment before, they're very difficult to get a read on from the test taker perspective, and they're designed that way. Um, so we get the report, and I get to go through it with the candidate, and we go section by section, and it will highlight strengths and weaknesses. So talking about things like how they handle stress, how they handle anxiety, what their motivation looks like, all very important things for pursuing flight training and aviation in general. How they handle dynamic situations. So it gets into the nitty gritty of those soft skills that you don't really consider, that go into being a pilot. Like being resilient throughout your training is a huge one that it touches on. So it's really cool just for the candidate to get some eyes onto that. And as you mentioned, we do hey, one-on-one, we have some more conversations. And these can be treated as mock interviews or really working on having those one-on-one conversations in the future when you're going to have to reach out to mentors or work on your networking skills. So each piece of our application process is really in the aim of having practical practice for your future in aviation. So learning how to talk with people, learning how to get comfortable at talking with strangers, basically in aviation, and also recognizing strengths and weaknesses. So being proud of honing in those strengths while also accepting and working on those weaknesses. So the application process really for us is making the candidate the most experienced candidate that we can, because it not only benefits them, it benefits us because we're placing them somewhere. Um, so that's one of my favorite parts, and it really hones in the personal connections that we have with the candidates. They're not going to get this much one-on-one time with a big school, as you said, just because they don't have the time. They don't have the time to sit down for an hour or two every week to meet with a student like that. So that's one of the strengths here at a smaller school like FlexAir, is really honing in those personal relationships between the staff and the students.
No, 100%. And I think that that really is the long and short of it there is, we do that on day one. That's the first interaction that new students have with us in the pilot pathway program is, to take that personality assessment, to learn about themselves, to get some practice in an interview type of an environment, and to get that all, get that rep in a safe environment where the stakes are lower because they're already here at FlexAir, and we're not going to throw them out based on that. It's just to get a little bit of experience before they even get to an aircraft with us, and that I think is the best illustration of what our values are. We care about those things the most because it's not just because we think it or have a philosophy. That's where we've seen success, and I think you've definitely seen it in the students that you've worked with. I've seen it in the veterans. You really need those soft skills. They're very, very important.